1984, Totalitarianism's Effects on the Mind. So I'll be reading an excerpt from page 284 to 288. There is a party slogan dealing with the control of the past, he said. Repeat it if you please. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past, repeated Winston obediently. Who controls the present controls the past, said O'Brien, nodding his head with slow approval. Is it your opinion, Winston, that the past has real existence? Again, the feeling of helplessness descended upon Winston. His eyes flitted towards the dial. He not only did not know whether yes or no was the answer that would save him from pain, he did not even know which answer he believed to be the true one. O'Brien smiled faintly. You are no metaphysician, Winston, he said. Until this moment, you had never considered what is meant by existence. I will put it more precisely. Does the past exist concretely in space? Is there somewhere or other a place, a world of solid objects where the past is still happening? No. Then where does the past exist, if at all? In records, it is written down, in records. And in the mind, in memory. Very well then. We, the party, control all records, and we control all memories. Then we control the past, do we not? But how can you stop people remembering things? Cried Winston, again momentarily forgetting the dial. It is involuntary. It is outside oneself. How can you control memory? You have not controlled mine. O'Brien's manner grew stern again. He laid his hand on the dial. On the contrary, he said, you have not controlled it. That is what has brought you here. You are here because you have failed in humility, in self-discipline. You would not make the act of submission, which is the price of sanity. You preferred to be a lunatic, a minority of one. Only the disciplined mind can see reality, Winston. You believe that reality is something objective, external, existing in its own right. You also believe that the nature of reality is self-evident. When you delude yourself into thinking that you see something, you assume that everyone else sees the same thing as you. But I tell you, Winston, that reality is not external. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. Not in the individual mind, which can make mistakes, and in any case soon perishes, only in the mind of the party, which is collective and immortal. Whatever the party holds to be truth is truth. It is impossible to see reality except by looking through the eyes of the party. That is the fact that you have got to relearn. Winston, it needs an act of self-destruction, an effort of the will. You must humble yourself before you can become sane. He paused for a few moments as though to allow what he had been saying to sink in. Do you remember, he went on, writing in your diary, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 makes 4? Yes, said Winston. O'Brien held up his left hand, its back towards Winston, with the thumb hidden and the 4 fingers extended. How many fingers am I holding up, Winston? 4. And if the party says that it is not 4 but 5, then how many? 4. The word ended in a grasp of pain. The needle of the dial had shot up to 55. The sweat had sprung out all over Winston's body. The air tore into his lungs and issued again in deep groans, which even by clenching his teeth he could not stop. O'Brien watched him, the 4 fingers still extended. He drew back the lever. This time, the pain was only slightly eased. How many fingers, Winston? 4. The needle went up to 60. How many fingers, Winston? 4, 4. What else can I say? 4. The needle must have risen again, but he did not look at it. The heavy stern face and the 4 fingers filling his vision. The fingers stood up before his eyes like pillars, enormous, blurry, and seeming to vibrate, but unmistakably 4. How many fingers, Winston? 4. Stop it, stop it. How can you go on? 4, 4. How many fingers, Winston? 5, 5, 5. No, Winston, that is no use. You are lying. You still think they are 4. How many fingers, please? 4, 5, 4, anything you like, only stop it, stop the pain. Abruptly, he was sitting up with O'Brien's arm round his shoulders. He had perhaps lost consciousness for a few seconds. The bonds that had held his body down were loosened. He felt very cold. He was shaking uncontrollably. His teeth were chattering. The tears were rolling down his cheeks. For a moment he clung to O'Brien like a baby, curiously comforted by the heavy arm round his shoulders. He had the feeling that O'Brien was his protector, that the pain was something that came from outside, from some other source, and that it was O'Brien who would save him from it. "You are a slow learner, Winston," said O'Brien gently. "How can I help it?" he blubbered. "How can I help seeing what is in front of my eyes? 2 and 2 are 4. Sometimes, Winston, sometimes they are 5. Sometimes they are 3. Sometimes they are all of them at once. You must try harder. It is not easy to become sane." He led Winston down on the bed, the grip of his limbs tightening again, but the pain had ebbed away and the trembling had stopped, leaving him merely weak and cold. O'Brien motioned with his head to the man in the white coat who had stood immobile throughout the proceedings. The man in the white coat bent down and looked closely into Winston's eyes, laid an ear against his chest, tapped here and there, then he nodded to O'Brien. "Again," said O'Brien. The pain flowed into Winston's body. The needle must be at 70, 75. He had shut his eyes this time. He knew that the fingers were still there and still 4. All that mattered was somehow to stay alive until the spasm was over. He had ceased to notice whether he was crying out or not. The pain lessened again. He opened his eyes. O'Brien had drawn back the lever. "How many fingers, Winston?" 4. "I suppose there are 4. I would see 5 if I could. I am trying to see 5. "Which do you wish? To persuade me that you see 5, or really to see them?" "Really to see them." "Again," said O'Brien. Perhaps the needle was at 80, 90. Winston only intermittently remembered why the pain was happening. Behind his screwed-up eyelids, a forest of fingers seemed to be moving in a sort of dance, weaving in and out, disappearing behind one another and reappearing again. He was trying to count them. He could not remember why. He knew only that it was impossible to count them, and that this was somehow due to the mysterious identity between 4 and 5. The pain died down. When he opened his eyes, it was to find that he was still seeing the same thing. Innumerable fingers, like moving trees, were still streaming past in either direction, crossing and recrossing. He shut his eyes again. "How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?" "I don't know. I don't know. You'll kill me if you do that again. 4, 5, 6. In all honesty, I don't know." "Better," said O'Brien. A needle slid into Winston's arm. Almost in the same instant a blissful healing warmth spread all through his body. The pain was already half forgotten. He opened his eyes and looked up gratefully at O'Brien. At sight of the heavy-lined face, so ugly and so diligent, his heart seemed to turn over. The excerpt mentions how the past can be changed to suit the current agenda. As humans, we are actually not really great at remembering things. This is made evident in cognitive psychology, which tells us that our memories are continual reconstructions of reconstructions, which eventually become strange distortions of the past. One way to get around this limitation of our fleshy memory banks enclosed in our bony skulls is the invention of writing. Reading and writing can convey information that can continue to outlive even the authors who wrote it. That's the good news about literacy. But the bad news is that it too can be manipulated. They can be heavily skewed to one side, biasing the interpretation for the victors, and thus are also prone to many errors and heuristics. 1984 shows that authorities and governments will use history to change the present and the future. You may call it revisionism or the embellishment of history to suit an ethnic, socio-political, economic agenda, but the past can change as long as the minds of humanity can change, forgetting the actual past and replacing it with a lie. No one would know, and memories fade into the ocean of human unconsciousness. Torture and brainwashing is used to enforce party doctrine and dictates, causing people to agree and believe the impossible possible and illogical logical. This imposes party interpretation into the objective world and thus in doing so destroys objectivity entirely. There is no way to trust anyone, not even yourself and your senses. That leads to the destruction of the mind to conform to so-called sanity when actually it is really insane that the masses have believed it to be healthy. Doublethink principles are at play as Winston is told to repeat that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Operant conditioning is used as punishment is given out to answers that do not align with party doctrine. Known as positive punishment, negative reward is given when punishment is halted. As a result, this causes the mind to rewire its neurons, favoring survival over reason and logic, turning man into an unconscious, obedient machine which continues to live, but is he actually alive after that? Winston may be living and breathing after his torture, but after this so-called re-education, does he really have a soul? His curiosity, determination to undermine the status quo, and the desire to seek the true, beautiful, and good have all become quashed. This may be the future dystopia, or it may already be a reality for us all.